warm welcome to this seminar or webinar on a warm winter's day in South Africa. So it would be an understatement to say that the past few years have proved to be quite dramatic for higher education. But it's also true that in the midst of the crisis that we experience lay great opportunity, as the adage goes, and we grasped the opportunity to evolve from archaic teaching approaches to adopting and adapting hybrid and blended approaches that place the student at the center of our universe. So in 2020, UTLO, the Teaching and Learning Office, established an additional support unit called the Instructional Design Unit. Now, you will agree that the nomenclature of instructional design is somewhat conservative in that it has connotations of fixed recipes for teaching. And that might have been true for conventional teaching approaches, but is no longer appropriate in the age of pervasive technology. So one of our instructional designers, Mukondi Molowitsi, who will be the chair of the session today, talked to me about the need to move beyond the limitations of instructional design to enable the learner to achieve the desired learning outcomes in a human-centered and goal-oriented way. Hence, we're here this morning to talk about learning experience design, or LXD, which is the practical process of designing engaging learning experiences tailored to the student's needs and preferences, which promote the acquisition and retention of knowledge and skills. Ladies and gentlemen, I am most privileged to welcome the pioneer in LXD, Niels Floor. I hand you over to Mukondi, who will introduce you to me and chair this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. And once again, welcome to all our attendees. Colleagues, we appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Today, colleagues, we are going to be looking at, next level teaching. And we have with us a pioneer in LXD, Niels. In all the research I've done, it says that you coined the term. So I guess when you speak, you will you will speak to that as well, because there seems to be a bit of debate, around LXD, how it started and all of that. But we're very happy to have you with us, colleagues. Niels Floor is a pioneer in learning experience design. He has dedicated himself to LXD since 2007, and he has also created the Learning Experience Canvas, which is a great innovative tool that contains a number of elements that can assist in the creation of, creating engaging learning experiences. So he has launched and he has facilitated a number of LXD conferences, such as the LXD Con, and he also founded LXD.org. He's become a global leader within the LXD community, and he has also co-founded Shapers Agency in 2001 after obtaining his master's degree in interaction design. Niels has taught at Dutch universities. He ran an LXD program at Advanced University and authored the book, This is Learning Experience Design. I think a must read. We need to get that and add it to all of us. We should add it to our libraries. And his agency serves clients such as AkzoNobel, European Investment Bank, Utrecht Tourism, collaborating with educational institutions worldwide. And we are happy to be starting to establish our relationship with him as well. So LXD, colleagues, is about crafting engaging and effective learning journeys that seamlessly blend technology and pedagogy. And this is important for us at UKZN, knowing that we are adopting a more blended approach to learning, instead of simply online. But, we see that adopting the blended learning approach would be best for our context. And drawing inspiration from Niels Floor's pioneering work in LXD, this webinar is tailored for UKZN lecturers seeking to enhance their blended learning initiatives. LXD is an effective approach within the learning and development space, which aligns with UKZN's vision of transformative education through technology. Join us today, colleagues, as we glean some insights from this innovative approach to teaching and learning, which places the learner or the student at the center. I hope this will be valuable for everyone. And I am now going to, without wasting any more time, hand over to Mr. Niels Floor. Welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Mukondleli, and thank you for this wonderful introduction. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today. Now I see 54 attendees, so thank you all for joining. I really appreciate you spending your time with us. And I hope we get to know each other a bit better during this webinar. And if you have any questions, please do ask them at any point in time. We do have an official kind of Q&A moment at the end, but I always invite people to share their thoughts and their questions while I speak, because I'll be speaking for about an hour, which is quite long to listen to someone talk, but I will have some questions for you as well, so we'll be interacting as well. All right, let me share my screen and get my presentation running. All right, so I want to give you an introduction to learning experience design. I think it's really important to have a kind of a bigger picture of what learning experience design is before you actually start to apply it. And I got a wonderful introduction just a moment ago by Mukondleli. Really, in recap, more in chronological order, I started my company Shapers already quite some time ago. And at one point in time, when I was both working as a designer for several clients, as an interaction designer, user experience designer, graphic designer, that's predominantly my background. I was also teaching at different Dutch universities. And I felt that there was something interesting in the overlap between the work that I do as a designer and the work that I did as a teacher. So I thought, what would happen if I would kind of combine those two worlds? If I would use a designer's perspective and methodology and apply it to the world of learning. And since I was already designing user experiences, I thought, why not design the experiences people learn from? And that's how the name learning experience design came to be, and almost by accident, if you will. But when that was in 2007, when I looked up the term learning experience design, I searched for it online, there were 0 hits. So that's why when I kind of figured that I had stumbled upon something new and different, which is how I, in a way, coined the term. Now, from that point on, I felt really strong about this concept of designing experiences people learn from. And instead of just applying it for my clients, I also created the learning experience canvas, which, as Mukondleli said, is a tool to assist you with designing learning experiences. And people started using it. I made it available for free. And this kind of spun off into two things. First of all, it spun off into a need for training, because people felt like, I want to be able to use the learning experience canvas. And also it spun off into a more of a global learning experience design community. Me talking to you here today is kind of a proof of that development, where we have people literally from all over the world excited about learning experience design and wanting to know more, and get to know more. So basically, I do three things. As a designer, I run my company. As a trainer and teacher, I spread learning experience design. And as a community leader, I try to serve the global LXD community. I've captured all of this experience in my book that's been published earlier this year by Pearson, and it is it really explains, the title also explains itself. This is learning experience design, what it is, how it works, and why it matters. So really happy about that, to be able to share that knowledge with you. Okay, so why are we here today? I think, like I said, it's really important to get a broader understanding of learning experience design before you start to apply it, because as Mukund Lely also said, there's some debate about the question, so what is learning experience design, where does it come from? And I think it's often simplified to a point where it's maybe seen as, well, you take one field, you add a bit of something else to it, and you're done. But there's more to it than that. So I want to give you that background, that fundamental knowledge about learning experience design today. But also I want to show you some examples of applying learning experience design. What does it lead to? What does it look like? And so hopefully by the end of this session, you will have a good understanding of learning experience design, but also have some be able to envision what it can mean to you, because it's really important to understand not just what it is, but how it relates to you is just as important. Because I know that people can take learning experience design or elements from it and apply it in different ways. So I really hope you're able to take some of the things that you've learned today and start applying them straight away. Okay. This is Annie, and she is one of the teachers that I've trained in Singapore at a polytechnic school. And the reason that I'm showing you is that what she's doing here is she's explaining a prototype of a game that she's made. And the interesting part is that during the training that I provided to these teachers, I challenged them. I asked them to take the most boring part of their lessons and turn it into the most exciting part of their lessons. So Annie is a pharmacy teacher. And so she said, well, pharmacy law is without a doubt the most dreaded and boring part of of the classes that I teach. So she took on the challenge and she turned pharmacy law into an interesting kind of role-playing game, where by representing different roles, you understood more, you learned really about not just pharmacy law, what the rules are, but really how they are applied and how they relate to you depending on the role that you have. Adding a bit of fun by someone being let's say a criminal, to kind of break the rules, and there would also be police involved. So really exciting. So as you can see, she's very energetic, and I can tell you that after this session, after these teachers testing this prototype, they were just as excited. Now she's put this into practice with her students, and she's already redesigned the game to make it even better. But the results were quite incredible, where students were really excited about this boring topic. And it really goes to show that if you use a design approach where you see that there are a lot of possibilities and you start creating new interesting formats, whatever it may be, this is a game, but can be any other format, that a lot is possible, and it makes the experience for the students more engaging, more enjoyable, and more effective. But it also makes the experience for the teacher more interesting and engaging, because you have more excited students and you also have a more exciting design process, if you will. So this is what happens when you put learning experience design into practice. So now let's look a bit more at learning experience. And before I go into that, I would like to ask you a question, because it's really important to know kind of in what type of environment you are teaching, in what kind of environment your students are learning. And every university, every country, every region, every city has its own culture, its own story, its own uniqueness. So I would like to ask you all to type in the chat window what you think is typical or even unique for KwaZulu-Natal University. All right, I see a lot of answers coming in. Students do not attend their lectures. Okay, so that's a design challenge. Things are unpredictable. Diversity. Okay, I hear a lot about diversity. Let me just take some notes as well. And as people are typing, I ask this question. Whenever I interact with a different university or organization, I ask this question because it's easy to become kind of blind to the things that you are used to. And when you really reflect on, so what makes this place different or unique, a lot of things can come up, and it really helps you to understand, you know, in what kind of context you are working and designing. Let's see what else. Our student profile ranging from students who have a reasonable level of preparedness to those who are very unprepared. All right, so there's quite a few challenges there. Diverse in their habits and attitudes. Students either do not read or battle to understand readings. Okay. Comprehension issues. Students' protest requires so many. English is the medium of instruction and is not the mother tongue from. Okay, so that's also. So what I see is there are quite a few design challenges here. Well, from my perspective, design challenges, there might also be organizational challenges or cultural challenges. And that's really interesting for me to know. But I'm sure there, some of these are more problem focused. I'm sure there are also things that are really positive about, what this university has to offer in terms of kind of the culture, the atmosphere, how the teachers are involved with the students. All right, so these are very specific, but also big challenges, I must say. I hear about poor reading, English not being their mother tongue, poverty of world experience. They have no real world context at all to relate to the theory. Now, when I showed this example of this of pharmacy law being turned into an interactive, exciting game experience, that was done very quickly with very limited means, and it turned something very text-based into something really experiential. So in that regard, I think learning experience design can help you to tackle some of these challenges. Let's see what else is in there. Students do not take their studies seriously. Okay, that's also a challenge. Connectivity issues. Attempted using game with students enjoy it, but still struggle with assessments. Well, there are. Joy, do you mean that that they still struggle with the assessment, or that you struggle to make the assessments more game-like?
Do you want Joy to speak? I think he wants to
Well,
engage it
also
out.
you can put it in the chat as well. It's okay. So I also see a preference for video-based learning rather than reading. So that's also an interesting point where to what extent do you facilitate the students towards what they prefer as opposed to what they also need to learn. So video might be easier for them, but learning to read, of course, is an essential skill, or having good reading skills. So working with that is also interesting. So Joyce, they struggle with answering questions during assessments or exams. Yeah, I can imagine also if the experience you offer is more game-like and the assessment is more traditional. So one of the solutions is that I work a lot with game designers. I design games myself. Is that assessment is part of the game. To complete the game, you are already tested on your knowledge or your skills. So if you can kind of weave the assessment into the game that you design, then that can also have a big benefit. And then we also have very large class and limited resources, tutors. Okay, so scale can also be a problem. Now, let me wrap this part up by saying that I think learning experience design can help you tackle quite a few of these challenges. It's not easy, and but it is something that's possible. As the professor just told us at the beginning, instructional design might kind of apply well to a more traditional setting. But when you start designing something really new and different, it might fall short. And I think that's where learning experience design comes in. So let me take you back to my presentation. Here we go. And thank you all for answering these questions.
Yeah, the question is from Hlolisile Chia. She was just also saying complexity in engaging large groups. So it's kind of a similar sort of comment. Yeah. Like gets to that, yes.
Perfect. Yeah, it's scale is always a challenge when it comes to making things personal. I agree. Let me see. All right, here we go. I want to talk about the power of experience. So years ago, as a young man, I traveled to Italy. To be precise, I traveled to Florence, which is an incredible city, as you can see. And I went there on vacation with my wife, and I've had studying graphic design first and then interaction design. There was art history was a big part of my education because design is an applied form of art. Graphic design draws a lot of inspiration from visual arts, from painting, for example. So I knew a lot about art history, Renaissance art, and there was one painting that I wasn't particularly excited to see because it's a painting that I had seen many times in my art history books and already in also on the slides of my teachers, on lunch boxes, on posters, because it's very well known. And that's the painting The Birth of Venus by Sandro Botticelli. And this painting I had seen it so many times that I was like, well, I'm sure it will be fine, but I will see it when I go to the Uffizi Museum. When I walked into the room where this painting is on display, I was blown away by its beauty, by the unique characteristics of this painting. And I was really amazed because like I said, I didn't have high hopes or expectations for this specific painting. So what made it so incredible? Well, there's a big difference between seeing a painting in a book and seeing a painting in the flesh. Because what Sandro Botticelli understood is that it's about the experience. It's not just about the painting. So he created a large painting. It's really large. And that skill already has a profound effect on the viewer. But also, as you can see in this detail, he used almost like kind of a graphic style with the lines surrounding the face. It was really modern, fresh, and different. It still looks fresh and modern today. And it's not just about people being blown away when he created it. He was one of the first people to work on canvas instead of wood. And because he worked on canvas, he could make it bigger. And that all contributed to the experience. And what also adds to experience is me being in the city where this painting was created hundreds of years ago. So going to Florence, seeing the beautiful city center, going to the museum, where in the same city where this painting was created, the smell, the food, everything, it all adds to the quality of the experience. And that's when I first really thought about the power of experience, about what it means to experience something that's really way more powerful than what you expected. So let me talk about experience. Because when we define learning experience, and experience is at the core of the definition. So what is an experience? I just talked about a personal experience about seeing a beautiful painting in Florence, but experience is really, really broad. And when I define experience, I say it's any situation you encounter that takes a certain amount of time and leaves some kind of impression. So basically, that's everything that happens to you while you are awake. And that's a lot. Now, why is it so important to define experience in a very broad way? Now, when I talk about learning experience, when I talk about learning, people often have preconceived notions about, okay, so learning, they think about a classroom, they think about talking, maybe they think about reading a book, or they think about watching a video. There are so many ways to learn, and if you want to benefit from learning experience, you need to really open your mind towards what all is possible. And then when you define experience as broadly as I've just done, it opens a wealth of opportunities, of possibilities to design different kinds of learning experiences. The example of the pharmacy game already shows that you can create a completely different experience from what people are used to and have a big impact with that. So also, I want to start with experience now that I've defined it, because like I said, it's at the core of learning experience design. What you design is the experience. It's not, let's say, a course or a video or a teaching aid or a book. Those can all be part of the experience, but the experience is more than that. It's about everything that happens before, during, and after the students go through the experience. So when you have different classes, I think about what happens in between those classes. How are they going to kind of digest what you've taught them, and think about the process that goes beyond the moments that you are really in touch with your students. So it's a different approach, and designing an experience is something different from designing a course. Now, as I'm already talking about design, what you create experience by designing it. And I just talked about design being an applied form of art. That's where I come from a design background. And that's what makes it so different already from learning in the fields like instructional design. because that's a different type of design. That's a more analytical, systematic, methodical approach, which has its benefits, absolutely. It's not better or worse, it's just different. A design approach, a creative design approach, enables you to work in a different way, to see things differently, and to do things differently. And that's where I think the biggest differences can be made in terms of what you create as an experience for your learners. Because the experience that you design has a clear purpose, which is learning. Now, I could have called learning experience design educational experience design, or even teaching experience design, because teachers are also important, and education might be broader, or instructional experience design. But I really thought about the importance of focusing on the learner and what they learn, what they experience. So learning experience design is a very deliberate choice, because you want to focus on the people you design for and what they learn from the experience that you design. So in short, the name explains itself. It's an experience you design for people to learn from. Now, that's not all. There's more to this story, because an experience is not just any experience. This experience is a human experience that has a specific goal. And that adds a lot to the story, because when I talk about human experience, we have to think about a couple of things. First of all, being human means that we are not just a set of brains. So we are not like an empty container that you can pour knowledge into. We are people with heads, hands, and hearts, to put it simply. We have bodies, we have, and so we want to have a more holistic approach to how you design learning experiences for a student, for a learner, and really involve not just their minds, but their being, if you will. And that means that being human also relates to having emotions. How we experience is largely influenced by how we feel. We can all, I hope we can all remember what it felt like to be in love for the first time. Maybe the other person didn't even know about it, but it would influence everything you did, how you felt, and how you experienced. So you could be in class kind of dreaming away about your dream boy or dream girl, and that would lead to a completely different experience than someone sitting next to you, maybe, who just had broken up with their boyfriend or girlfriend. They have a completely different experience as well. So emotion is a big part of how we experience, but often it's not taken into account when we look at learning. But I'm a strong advocate of designing not just for what people learn, but also for what people feel. So that's the second element. The third, so more holistic approach, design for emotion, and also the fact that human beings, we are a collaborative species. We socialize, we work together. So design for social interaction when you design a learning experience. It's human nature to talk to other people, to interact, to work together. So keep that in mind when you design learning, especially when you design online learning. It's not an individual process. It's something, as always, other people involved. So that's the human side. And the human side is best captured in the term human-centered design. And that's a design a method or a design approach that comes from user experience design, that's developed to really not just create, let's say, a technical, well-functioning solution for your clients, but really to think about what kind of experience do they have as a user that's really smooth and to provide them with a smooth, frictionless learning experience or user experience. You need to be able to understand who they are, where they come from. So human-centered design is really important also in learning experience design. The goal of the experience you design is to get to a certain outcome. And to get to this outcome, you need to have, take the right steps. And that comes from goal-oriented design, which comes from interaction design. And interaction design is really about thinking about the steps people take, understanding the psychology of the people you design for in order for them to reach their goals. So when you put it all together, you end up with a definition. So learning experience design, or LXD or LX design, is the process of creating learning experiences that enable the learner to achieve the desired learning outcome in a human-centered and goal-oriented way. Now, in this definition, I want to highlight a couple of words. Creating learning experiences. Creating implies that it is a creative process, and I will touch on that process later on. But it is rooted in design disciplines. It's about creating something out of nothing. You start with an empty sheet of paper and you end up with a prototyped learning experience. Also, enable the learner means that you are not just teaching, you are creating the right circumstances for people to learn, to empower them. And I know every teacher tries to do that, but I've seen how a approach like learning experience design kind of offers more ways to do that. So that can be really fulfilling. And then the last two ones, human-centered and goal-oriented. So I just talked about those. These are design principles that can be applied really well to the world of learning. Now, to put it into more, to make it more practical, you see 4 quadrants that exist right now when you define learning experience design. And in these quadrants, you can also put words that kind of represent the main purpose of these quadrants. So the human side of design really focuses on what kind of process is going to happen. So it's more about how do I get from A to B in a interesting, engaging, exciting way. So that's where you have to understand the psychology of the learner, the more the human side of the learning process, or of the whole process that people are going through. The goal-oriented side of design is more product-focused, where you think about, well, I have a process, but people also, my students also need to have materials, learning materials, things they can use. Am I going to use Zoom, for instance, is a product that you can use within a process. But the game that Annie from Singapore designed also has products in it. Not just the design of the process, but also a product, so they can play the game. On the human side of learning, you have the more theoretical aspects of learning. And it's important to understand, to know a bit about how our brains work, how people, how students process information, how to retain knowledge, how, basic understanding of how we learn as people. And it also needs to be put into practice. So the goal-oriented side of learning is really about, how do I get my students to proceed? How do I get them to develop, to learn something? So that's where teaching takes place. Now you can imagine if any of these elements is missing, the learning experience kind of falls apart. You can have a great process that has a theoretical foundation about how we learn, and products that are really well designed. But if it can't be put into practice, it's all for nothing. So for instance, if you're looking at primary school students, then and you say, well, I create this wonderful interactive experience, great process, it's all theoretically sound, and there are really cool elements that they can work with, but it's going to take 8 hours in a row that's never going to work. So, but also if it's really practical and you have great products, but and some really nice learning theory, but the process doesn't work, the timing isn't right, or the it's not in the right order, and it's also going to fall apart. So making sure that everything is represented in these is really important to have a holistic learning experience. To make it more practical, these are the fields most of the fields that are fundamental to learning experiences, and they've kind of all blended into this interdisciplinary field that learning experience design has become. And you can see a lot of design disciplines, you can see learning disciplines. And the design disciplines represent a big part of how learning experience designers work. And I just talked about being a graphic designer, learning graphic design first, then moving into interaction design. So I have the human and goal-oriented side of learning experience design covered in that respect. When I started teaching, I became more aware of the goal-oriented side of learning. How do I motivate my students? How do I help them succeed? How do I empower them? And the human side of learning is something that I've just studied on my own, and I've worked with a lot of neuroscientists, with psychologists, and they have helped me to gain a better understanding of how we learn. So I can put all of this together. Now, you don't have to be an expert in industrial design, game design, coaching, cognitive psychology, interaction design, all that at the same time. But if you have knowledge from some of these fields in the different quadrants, the combination is really powerful. I just talked about how in the debate of learning, about defining learning experience design, is often kind of simplified to, for instance, what people say, well, it's basically instructional design, you add a bit of user experience design and you're done. Well, as you can see in this representation and my ideas, it's more than that. It's really a combination of a lot of different fields, and balancing these fields really, I think, shows the not just the interdisciplinary nature of learning experience design, but also that there is so much to learn and explore, and to also, for me, still to this day, to keep improving as a learning experience designer. Okay.
All right, now
let me start a video and watch that video, and I have some questions for you afterwards. Oh, wait, sorry. Here we go.
All right, now it's time for something. I don't know if this will be educational, but the president is overseas. He's visiting Belgium, England, Scotland, and then his pal Putin in Finland. It's a big trip with many important ramifications. It's imperative that America has strong relationships with and knowledge about people in other lands. And that responsibility extends to all of us, not just the president. So we came up with a test. The test is very simple. Went out on the street, we asked people who were passing by to name a country on a map. That's it. We had a map. We said, name a country, any country. And here's how that went.
Can you name any country on this map?
Honestly, my geography is so horrible. I can't name anything. Like
Try
nothing.
naming something.
Is it South Africa?
Nope.
Yeah, the country of Asia.
Nope. That's a continent, and
Oh,
that's
whoops.
Russia.
Oh, damn. I'm silly.
That's okay.
Man, it's been a while since I've been in school.
That's okay. Any country on the map.
Africa.
That's a continent.
Country. Damn
How about a country in Africa?
it. I know South Africa's over here somewhere.
No, it's south.
down here, yeah.
Yeah, it's south.
Oops.
Can you name any country on this map?
Yeah. Africa?
That's a continent.
Oh, God.
Can you name any countries in Africa?
No, who knows stuff like that?
Can you name any country on this map?
Yes. Africa.
That's a continent.
Country. Or Iceland or something?
That's Alaska. Any country. And on the entire map.
This is so horrible.
Where's America?
I would say this big one, but I'm probably wrong.
She's definitely wrong.
Okay.
Can you name any country on this map?
Oh my gosh. Shouldn't I be taught this in school?
I would hope so.
South America?
That's a continent.
Oh my god.
How about a country in South America?
Yeah. Honduras is here.
Nope.
Here. Somewhere here.
Nope. Can you name any country in Europe?
Is this one Europe?
No.
This one?
No.
Can
you name a single country in Africa?
Was this Africa?
No, again, that's South America.
No idea.
Can you name a country in South America?
Okay, this is South America.
Yes, can you name a country in it?
No, I can't.
Did you go to high school?
Yes.
Did you go to college?
Yeah, that's a sad part.
Argentina, Chile, Bolivia, Brazil, Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, Mexico, United States, Canada, Greenland, Iceland, Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea.
Oh, thank God.
All right. So, oh, wait. That was pretty, I've seen this video a couple of times, and every time I see it, I have to laugh, but also I feel kind of almost like embarrassment. I would just like to know from you, what can we learn from watching this video as teachers? So please put it in the chat what you what comes to mind, what we can learn from watching this video. And anyone can answer, of course. Long-term versus short-term memory, yeah. I've learned quite a few tests 10 minutes before entering the classroom and scoring really well and then almost instantly forgetting. Never take things for granted. That's a good one. Absolutely. People don't have a sense of where they fit in the world. Wow, that's almost philosophical. Yeah, I mean, but that is a great point, because it isn't just about knowing names of countries and pointing them out on a map, but really about a more worldly perspective. People are only aware of their own surrounding. Yeah. This is a major challenge in teaching students, not embedding knowledge in memory banks. Okay, yeah. Teaching to the test, and then the knowledge becomes obsolete. Yeah. Generally, Americans are poor with geography. They just don't know about the world. Yeah. No. In defense of most Americans, I think most people don't have a passport in the US, because it's such a huge country. And you can live there your whole life, see a lot of beautiful things, travel very far, never have to leave the country. On the other hand, you might expect to at least know, I don't know, Canada, for instance, or your own country on a map. I mean, they should be able to do that. Let's see, relevance of information knowledge is to daily life. Yeah, that's so relevance. They learn for a test and not for knowledge. All right, so there's a lot of great feedback here. I think one of the things that is often mentioned as well is that it's not good to make fun of other people's ignorance or lack of knowledge. You know, they're kind of put on the spot. Map, they changed the map a little bit, you know, from what you might call a normal perspective. So these people are kind of put under pressure, and maybe they have like a blackout or anything. And so you can imagine you don't want to do this to your students where everyone's laughing at them and they're like, oh, you don't know anything. But when you think about and there was mentioned earlier about missing a kind of a broader perspective or a worldly having worldly experience. Maybe it's not just about teaching names of countries and where they are on a map, but really creating more of an interest in other people's countries and cultures in general. Maybe being interested in what you can learn from other countries. Things they do really well, or things you might be better at. So if people are made curious about these countries, and they might even want to travel there, or they want to learn from it, so they have a different motivation, then it might stick. So it's clear that they were taught this in school, but they don't remember anything. So if there's no application for it, if there's no context or relation to it, then it just doesn't stick. And that leads me to this very general conclusion that it's not about what experience. Let me just move this out of the way. How can I move? I can't see my. Sorry. It's not just about what experience we remember, but it's about what we remember from the experience. They were in high school, or they had geography, but they just don't, and they remember the fact that they were there, but they don't remember what they were taught. And when we think about our personal experiences, we've had many experiences that we forget, some of that we remember. And looking at what makes an experience memorable can, from a personal perspective, can really also help you to understand how you can make an experience memorable for your students. One of the ways to do that is, like I talked about before, is to design for emotion and not just for cognition. If these Americans would have some kind of emotional connection to a foreign country, maybe it's as simple as, well, your ancestors, you're Irish, or you're from Latin America, and at least know something about that country. That already makes it much more memorable and much more personal. Now, if you want to achieve if you want to use emotion in your design, it's really nice to know about the peak-end rule by Daniel Kahneman. And the peak-end rule is really a very simple rule that can have a profound impact on the quality of the learning experiences that you design and offer to your students. Now, what the peak-end rule means is that what people remember from an experience is tied to the emotional peaks, the highs and the lows, and they generally remember the ending of the experience. Now, this is something that you can apply really easily when you think about how you structure a class. And some people who know really well how it works are musicians, bands, rock bands. So yes, you can have a presentation. I will make sure the PDF files are available. That's a great question, Kaya. So if you go to a Queen concert, well, that's not, well, they still tour, by the way. Yeah, new singer. When you go to a Queen concert, there is a structure there, and I once heard their drummer explain how they did it. So they have a big opening, and then they kind of wind it down. They go to like a peak at the middle of the concert. They wind it down a bit more, and then there's a there's sing along, and then it's climactic with "We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions." It all builds up to, as the drummer said, always leave them wanting more. That's why people chant "We want more" at the end of a concert. Now, a rock concert and a class don't sound like they must have much in common, but you can use the same principles. What if you could have your students excited about your class in a way where they say, "We want more. We're not leaving. The hour is over, but we want more." And it might sound impossible, but I've seen it happen with some of the experiences I've designed, where students were already waiting by the classroom before the end of the break because they said, "We want to continue. We don't want more time off. We want to be able to continue with our classes." So that's something to aim for. Now, what's important to know about this peak end rule is that we have the experiencing self and the narrating self. And the experiencing self is the person you are as you go through the experience. Now, I've used an example of learning how to cycle. I'm from the Netherlands, so we cycle everywhere, and cycling is really important for us. So we, as small kids, we learn how to cycle when we were about 3 years old. But when you learn how to cycle, it's scary, and you might succeed at first with a bit of help, and you're like, "Yeah, this is cool." But then you fall and you cry, and you have an emotional high. You've had an emotional high, you have an emotional low, and it goes, you trial and error, and then you are cycling, and it's like, yeah, it's for a kid, it's really important because, your world expands, you learn something new, you can get to places that you can't just walk to, and it's really an exciting experience. But that experiencing self changes all the time. Just like students in a classroom, when they enter at the halfway point of a class, when they leave, after they've left, before they enter the next time, the experiencing self is always changing depending on what's happening, how you feel. And the narrating self is who you are as you reflect on the experience. And generally, that's where you construct a narrative of what we went through, and that's how we remember things. And you will remember the emotional high at the end of learning how to cycle much better than maybe some of the smaller missteps, but if you had a really bad fall while you were learning, you might remember that as well. So one way to apply this, not just so I see that I'm running a bit out of time. I'll keep talking for a bit more if you don't mind, but we'll also get to some more questions in a moment. So one way to apply it is in your teaching is how you give feedback. If you end on a negative note, your students will remember that. But if you kind of give some positive remarks, some criticism, and then end with a positive note, like you've done this part really well, but this part didn't go so well. But with a bit of exercise, a bit of help, I am confident that you can do even better, and your overall results will be a lot higher, for instance. So to really play with that. So that's the peak end rule. Yeah, all right, yeah. So emotions, as I said, are an important part of how we learn and how our experiencing self, go through the experience. Using emotion in your design is really powerful, but you also have to be careful with it. And I want to give you one short example from my personal experience. So this is music that I created. And the reason that I'm letting you hear this, I will explain in a moment. All right, so this was just a short piece of music from a song that I've written. I like to make music. I also play, so I play guitar and a couple of different instruments. But this song is very special to me because I wrote it for a friend of mine who has passed away. And this song was written for her while she was alive. And before she died, she asked me if the song could be played at her funeral. So that was quite intense. Now, I wanted to teach my students about the power of emotion. So I was teaching learning experience design at Dutch University. And I gave them these brain boosters. And I said that music and learning to play an instrument is a great way to boost your brain. It helps, to develop your brain. So I said, so I'm going to play a song for you. And I thought, well, if I play something that's special to me, they will feel it. So the message will come across even better. But when I played the song, I underestimated my own response because I got a bit emotional myself because it was quite, it's such a personal song and I didn't expect that. And that was just weird and a bit awkward. And to be honest, I wouldn't do it like that again. So the next time I played music for them, I just played a cover song for them to enjoy. And that was much better. So when you use emotion in your design, be careful with it, use it in the right way. Okay, so now we looked at you all got the question about, you saw the video on those foolish Americans who think that South Africa is everywhere except in South Africa. So now there's a question for you, and you can put in the chat your answer. Which country is Paraguay? Is it 1, 2, 3, or 4? And I'm not going to laugh at you if you're wrong. You can just put it in there. If you're wrong, there's something to be learned. If you're right, awesome. So yeah, I see some answers coming in. And so far, everyone is saying 3. So there's a lot of consensus here, I must say. Is anyone daring to say another number? Below 3, as in number 4 then? Or the country beneath 3? Got it on the internet. Beneath 3. So would that then be number 4 or just a country beneath 3? Oh, so Dusty says 4. I think we have not 4, 5. 4. I think we have all the answers in right now. Let's see. It's number 3. Number 5 is number 4 is Uruguay. The country underneath number 3 is Argentina. And number 1 is Colombia. And number 2 is French Guiana. So there you go. But well done. And if you didn't get it right, see it as an invitation to, well, most of you had it right, but if you didn't get it right, it's an invitation for you to become better at geography, because it is a really interesting topic. And, it's easy to laugh at other people, but also we can laugh at ourselves for not knowing everything and seeing it as a way to learn more. let me just quickly, yeah. So I've been talking for quite a bit, and there's already quite a bit of information here. So I want to start to take questions, and if depending on which questions are, I can also show you an example of a learning experience that I've designed that's quite different. But yeah, I would like to open the floor to any questions based on what you've just heard in my story relating to defining learning experience design, the example of the of Annie, the teacher in Singapore, and also the peak end rule and the importance of emotions in your design. So are there any questions right now?
Thank you, Niels. Please feel free to raise your hand if you would like to speak, or you can put your questions in the chat as well. That is also welcome. Yeah, it's open, colleagues. Feel free to engage, Niels. Hear a bit more about learning experience design. Thank you, Niels. That was quite interesting.
Yeah. Vishanti said much of what is being discussed applies to in-class and online teaching and learning, or blended teaching and learning. How is learning experience design any different? What is novel and different about it? Using creative arts in teaching and learning is not at all unusual. Well, for some it might be, for some not. I think, as I discussed, the main difference is that you use a design approach and methodology. And that's something that I kind of ran out of time to talk about, but I can address it for sure. Some specific examples would be helpful. Yeah, so that's a great question, and I'll just go back to my presentation and talk about a project that I've done. But there's another question coming in. I'll get to my presentation in a moment. To summarize the learning pyramid, yeah. So the learning pyramid, that's a myth, to be honest. The learning pyramid is based on the work of Edgar Dale, and Edgar Dale created the cone of learning, and the cone of learning displayed experiences that we can have from very limited in terms of the amount of senses that we involve in the experience, from seeing something, listening to something, seeing and hearing something, up until demonstrating something yourself. There's a whole using video and audio. So there's a whole scale of, let's say, the richness of the experience. So what happened at one point in time is that pyramid that looked really nice, but had no real, there was no real way to apply it. Someone apparently from a marketing department used that same cone of learning and translated it into something where he added percentages, saying we only remember 10% of this or 20% of that. But there's no proof or anything that is true. And in fact, there's a lot of proof that it isn't true. And I went to a training yesterday, and the same example was used, where you only remember 10% of what you hear, or 20%. And the good news is that, well, the bad news is it isn't true, because it would be really handy to know exactly how it works. But the good news is that, for instance, if you tell a great story, people remember much more of that story than if you tell a boring story. So you still you can use any form of learning. If you do it well, people will remember it. So the takeaway that I have from the original work by Edgar Dale, from the cone of learning, is that generally, as I like to say, more senses makes more sense. So involving more senses makes a stronger connection in our brains, in our bodies, and makes it easier to remember things. So I wouldn't, don't look at the learning pyramid as something factual, but look at it as something that can inspire you to involve more senses. Let's see, let me go back to my, there's also more questions in the Q&A. I'll go to the example first. And yeah, share my screen. All right, and I've got some, yeah. The Island at the Center of the World is a book written by American historian and writer Russell Shortall. And it's about the founding of New Amsterdam. And New Amsterdam is what later became New York. So a ship under Dutch flag came to the shores of what is now called Manhattan, which was actually called Mannahatta, as Native Americans called it. And a city was founded called New Amsterdam, and that's where some of the unique cultural aspects that we still know in New York today kind of came to be, because the Netherlands was always kind of a nation where a lot of different people came in, different nationalities, and together they went over there. There were Germans, Italians, Spanish, Dutch, all of them were heading to New Amsterdam. And to commemorate the founding of New Amsterdam, we were asked to design a learning experience together with a whole team. I was kind of as a learning experience designer, to design a cooperative learning experience for students in Amsterdam and in New York that could be played real time. They could be experienced real time. So what we did is created a trading game where we looked at historical places, both in Amsterdam and New Amsterdam or New York, and use those locations to not just talk about history and how trade took place back then, but really to have students experience this shared history by actually trading with each other and understanding the dynamics of what happened. For instance, beaver fur was very popular for a long time, so that's what came from New Amsterdam to Europe. But when beaver fur went out of fashion, things changed. So all of the things are really we put into a historic, real-time, game-like learning experience. And so this was kind of the concept of the game, that you have to go to these physical places to be able to do certain things. And this is what it looked like. So these are students in Amsterdam, in different places. They had a map of Amsterdam, and they could go to these actual historic places. In New York, there were less historic places, but we used the original locations where those places used to be. So you would have students running around in Amsterdam and in New York, trying to go to the stock market, going to acquiring for whatever, might be corn or tobacco, and then storing it somewhere and then shipping it off and trading deals with people on the other side of the ocean. As you can see, the girl with the finger in the air, she is right now, no more, we want more money. And what was so great about this experience is that, like I said, it's a history lesson, but it really made history come alive. And we used quite a bit of technology. So this was years back already, but we had phones that could, with software that could unlock certain abilities by being in a specific spot. So you would really have to go there to do something, and then to move on to the next spot. And this allowed for different strategies. You can run faster, you can be more tactical, you can be better at bargaining a good deal. And that's how students from different levels of schools were all able to compete in a very fun and friendly way. And the winners weren't necessarily the smartest, but could also be just the most, the students who were willing to work the hardest or to make the best deals. So this was part of the experience. We also designed some more things around this to commemorate this this shared past. And it was really a lot of fun. And if you want to do this, and this is the design process in the most basic way that we apply, and how also I think it's different from another, from let's say more regular approaches. We start with a question. So what are you trying to achieve? Now, in this case, the question is about, so how can we have students learn more about this collective past, commemorate the history of New York, New Amsterdam, and do it in a way where they can also, learn from each other. So that was kind of the goal. And then you do your research, which means not just to understand more about the topic, but really to dive into who are these students, how are Dutch students different from American students, what kind of overlap is there, what do there's a lot of influence from American culture on the Netherlands, but vice versa in modern times, of course, that the other way around is negligible. But at the same time, from the existence of New Amsterdam, Dutch culture has influenced New York as well. So there's an interesting kind of situation there. So you dig deeper into who these students are and how to create something for them that works for them. So that's where the design process starts. So we had nothing. We only knew about the topic. We had this book written to inspire us with stories of people traveling there as founding New Amsterdam. And then we started creating these different, having ideas, concepts, and creating a first prototype of a game-like experience. And you test it and you do some more research, so you iterate your design. And only when you've gone through the iteration to a point where you think, now it works really well, then is the moment to launch. So this type of process is in a way quite unpredictable. Because designers never start with they don't know exactly what's going to be the end result. They only know, okay, so this is the kind of question that we're trying to answer. But how to answer that question is really a creative, iterative process. And this type of experimentation and creative design approach is something that generally lacks in let's say in traditional instructional design or learning approaches. And these steps might seem quite simple. You do your research, you design, you do prototype, you test, and you evolve. But there's a lot going on within that process. I think that's something, because some of you might join our learning experience design course in September. That process, mastering that process, those relatively simple steps, is an endlessly interesting process to work with. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Niels,
so there's
you have Quilling. I had said you'll get to a question. It's then answered. I find tension between how much you want to put in a curriculum, that is content, and developing interesting ways of teaching, a time pressure or tension.
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's always tension in sense that you never have an ideal situation where everything is possible. Well, let me explain by talking about e-learning that we develop for clients. Clients always want to put everything into the e-learning module as much as possible, especially, let's say, we work with the learning and development team for at organizations, and the subject matter experts or the managers say, well, this is important, this is important, this is important, everything is important. We turn it around, we say, well, that's possible, that might be important, but what really matters to your employees? And what do you want to see happening on the work floor? What do you see happening with in terms of how they behave, the things that they do? And often, for instance, when you talk about something as like safety, we developed an e-learning course on safety for a financial institution, and safety is a broad term. It has to do with physical safety, like fire alarms and stuff, and but also online safety, for instance. But when you talk about these subject matter experts, they can give you complete books on everything on safety. But when we focus on what's really important, what you want to see happening, it was much more about awareness, about certain things, about knowing how and when to take action, and instead of knowing like endless rules of safety safety rules and stuff that are really dry. So once you start focusing on, I want to cover a lot of things, but what really matters most to the student, and focusing on those things first, and maybe making other things available for extra reading, or if they're, but really getting them into the right mindset, into the right way of thinking, and excited about the topic is just as important as is even more important than trying to add more stuff. So focus on the things that really matter to the student and to you, and focus on that first. And if they want to learn more, then you can always add more stuff later on. But that's what I would advise for that. And I know, being a teacher myself, it's sometimes hard to say, well, this is also important, this is also important, but really try to first look at it from the student's perspective. And you might find out that you need less content and more action, more activity, to really engage the student and to learn more, and get them ready to learn more.
All right, Niels.
Okay.
There's one more question we have. It says, this is from Ishana. I note that LXD and UDL both focus on enhancing the learning experience and improving outcomes for a diverse range of students, but these are distinct concepts. How do the two concepts work together? Can they complement each other and be mutually beneficial in designing? Well, I guess this question, Niels, comes from the fact that we sort of have adopted the UDL approach, Universal Design for Learning, to enable more students to access the learning content as well. So I guess Ishana is interested in, finding out, is it possible to use those two in concert, and how that might be possible.
So I'm not that familiar with UDL, but I do understand that it's about giving students equal opportunity to succeed. And I think, I never tell people what kind of learning strategy to use when they design a learning experience. What I tell them, what I try to teach, is how to use a design approach to create experiences to learn from, and to pick the kind of and use other approaches, or let's say learning approaches or theories, or and take what works best within the design that you are creating. So I think the concept of UDL can be really applied really well when you design a learning experience, because it's well, if the goal is to give people equal opportunities to succeed and to keep them motivated, there are many ways to keep someone motivated. You can use really fun, exciting, engaging forms of learning. So I think there's a bit of overlap there, but also, these are two different approaches. So that's something that I couldn't answer in detail, but generally, I think they can work really well together. And yeah, because like I said, I don't advocate any specific kind of methodology where you have to, when you design learning experience, you have to use this approach only. You can really use many different approaches. The design principles are fundamentally stay the same, but how you apply them, combining them with different approaches is kind of the beauty of the work that I do, because I've seen people in different parts of the world taking the same design principles and creating completely different experiences with them, because also they say, well, we use surface design as part of our approach. Well, that's also possible. So I want to keep it as open as possible for people to take what works for them. And I think UDL and LXD can mix really well. And there's a raised hand from Zama.
Yes, I think that should be the last one. We've already run over time, but I'm going to unmute Zamam Sidi to ask.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I would have put this in the chat, but I feel like it might be a little too long to just type through. So it's quite interesting. I find that because of the classes that we teach, sometimes they're a bit large, and there is an element where, students would fall through the cracks. And it's a known fact that a lot of the students, they don't really go through the stuff that we prepare for them. I've tried to prepare videos. A lot of them really appreciate the videos, but they don't really, a lot of them don't watch them before class. So we actually have to put them in class. And what's really interesting about what you're describing is that it's something that I've actually incorporated in some of my lectures. For example, one of the lectures, instead of explaining in detail what stereognosis is, so I would bring objects to class, have volunteers, blindfold them, and try to show them. And I got a really good feedback on that. So I'm just wondering, in the context of science, are there any platforms or anything that we can use, other strategies that we can use? Because it sounds like you have a platform, and I'm just wondering how, as a basic scientist, I can use those platforms to enhance learning for our students.
That's a great question. I love the example that you just gave, Zama. Is it Zama? Is it pronounced correctly?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. How you kind of use interaction and use the senses of the students to make the experience more interesting, more exciting. And I think, well, there are a couple of things. There is a lot about interesting theory and examples in game design that can be used really well, that relates to the kind of approach that you just described, where you use models like the car model, which is about competence, autonomy, and relatedness as three elements of ensuring that people really learn from playing a game, for example. So there's a lot to be found in game design. Also, I think using a tool like the learning experience canvas, I can also, let's say, I'll just put it in, if you go to lxd.org, I just put it in the chat, you can download the canvas for free. It helps you to kind of structure your process and kind of repeat the success of the experience you already designed, but design something completely different and also make sure that it works really well. But you said two things. You talked about how can you kind of what kind of methods can you use to do that effectively as a scientist. Like I said, game design, also, so it's the learning experience canvas, and also I talk quite a bit in my book about, you know, the motivation of the student, of the learner. But you also talked about scale, large groups, and that's generally a challenge where you want to involve large groups of people, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so there is an example. I also come from game design. There are massive multiplayer online role-playing games like World of Warcraft, where thousands, if not millions, of people, share an incredible experience. Now, of course, you can't just develop World of Warcraft for a science class. But there are examples of large groups having meaningful interaction. And I think there are strategies for that, in the sense that, for example, storytelling can be really powerful to connect with a large group of people. You know, a strong story can involve a lot of people, but you can also think about in the classroom, if you have, let's say, 100 students, or maybe even 200 students, you can give them something collectively. But when they are out of the classroom, they can do things in smaller groups, work together, or maybe have some kind of way to collaborate on a larger scale, and think about what works well within this context and what would work well within another context. So there are many. I really like the way you start thinking about how can I take this scientific topic and make it more tangible and more experiential, and using learning experience design theory, game design theory, also interaction design theory is also very powerful in terms of how to engage people and have them go through a process that works for them. So if you look at the slides, the different fields of expertise that are there to define learning experience design, those 4 quadrants, I would definitely look at some of those fields and just see what's out there and experiment with it.
Thanks, Niels, and thanks, Zama, for that question. Yeah, colleagues, I think we've run over, and I do apologize for that. But thanks so much, Niels, for coming through and sharing with us about learning experience design. As an instructional designer myself, actually, instructional design done properly is more like learning experience design than anything. So I'm interested, to see how we can take this further, and we will share with the people the slides. But yeah, I think one of the things that really stuck for me was that getting your students emotionally invested in the learning experience instead of simply cognitively. I think that's crucial because, it speaks a lot to the experience, like the example you gave with the girlfriend and the lover, so I think that was quite interesting. So thank you so much for that, Niels. And thank you so much, colleagues. Badru, do you have any last words you would like to say? Did I miss anything?
Yeah, no. It's thanks, Neil. I think it was very informative. It was informative session, and I learned a lot. And it also takes me back to, you know, some of my experiences, you know, learning in different, as Neil said, you know, you need to use different approaches. You don't, there's no one size fits all, right? So you need to identify the why of, you know, what you're teaching. Why do these students need to learn this? And then you then apply the approach, you know, that works with the purpose of their learning. And I do see so much value in that, because I remember, so I am from a technology background, and I remember then when I was learning networking, and networking is a bit abstract, except if you are on the field, you know, where you actually putting the cables together and then putting it in the laptops, connecting to the routers and the switches. But I learned these on a simulated application, you know, called the Cisco packet tracer. Not even having access to a Cisco to a router because it's expensive, or to a switch that is expensive, I still learned the approach, you know, of cabling. I still learned online on this application. So it was like a simulation, and you know, it was, and I think that is, it's totally linked to experiential learning, because I could experience, you know, the approach. Even there was the approach of the admin also, where maybe a client comes in to ask me, or to tell me I have this problem, then I need to recommend, you know, what type of switch or what type of network that they must use. So even if your student do not have access directly to this space, maybe the field space, the field work, you know, we could think of ways in which we can adopt applications online that would help you to simulate similar experience. Yeah, that's more of it for me, and I think that would really help, you know, in improving our students' experience and student learning. Thank you so much, Kondi. Thank you so much, Neil. Yeah, that's my comments.
Thank you, Badru.
It's absolutely my pleasure, and I thank you to everyone. And Badru, I think you really illustrate a very important point where, you know, I'm not trying to tell anyone how to do their work. I'm really trying to show different approaches and opportunities for people to do things differently and see what works for them. And there are so many ways for people to learn, and you just shared a powerful example. And you know, I hope that this session has kind of opened people's eyes to things that are possible, and there's even much more we can talk about. But yeah, I hope people just start trying things and see what they can learn from it.
No doubt. Thank you, colleagues. I think let's call it a day. Let's get back to you know, the business of the day. But we will be sending you an evaluation form for the engagement. So please do take the time to fill it out. It's important, you know, it's part of the learning experience as well, that we get your feedback on this engagement. So yeah, I think we can close it now, colleagues, and allow you to get back to your, you know, your duties. And thank you so much again for availing yourselves and staying, even though we did eat a bit of your time. And thank you, Niels, for making yourself available for the extra time. Thank you, colleagues. Let's all have a good day.